need to explain it again.
Arrest on suspicion causing a breach of the peace.
What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean, officer?
All of us know that our courts have been weaponised against the public. Whether it be Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, £1 billion, Donald Trump, what happened to Geert Wilders, what happened to Morten Messerschmidt, anyone who challenged the EU, challenged government, challenged open borders, anyone who goes against the narrative, the target is put on them and they use and manipulate the courts, similar to what you've watched with Donald Trump. I have got the start to finish documented, how they do it, covert recordings, who's involved.
Well,
yeah?
Yes.
All of it.
I want to show this because I know you can't show it in the UK. Tommy Robinson has been on the show. You know this, he's British. He is now on bail. This is the first time he'll be giving an interview, I believe, right? Since being out on bail. Yeah. And he's actually someone who, I know what you're thinking, he must be like a violent sex offender or he must be a murderer to have been arrested over half a dozen times. No. He's
I'm sorry, I see him laughing.
He's reported on roving grooming rape gangs and actually stood up for freedom of speech. Now, I will say this, he can be a loose cannon in the sense that he's a guy who doesn't shy away from being controversial. But no, he's not a guy who's gone out there and hurt anybody. He's not a guy who's robbed anybody or killed anybody. He's been arrested over half a dozen times. Most recently, it related to a rally in London opposing an influx of illegal immigrants into the UK.
Our government and politicians have betrayed us all. They think they're putting me on trial.
You need to explain it again.
Arrest on suspicion causing a breach of the peace.
What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean, officer? What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean?
I just put you on trial. Now I want to ask, what does it mean to be British? Do you have to be white to be British? Hey, thank you. Many migrants have come to this nation and their children and their families embrace it and love it.
So, you just saw that. I know to Americans this is going to sound foreign. I was raised in Canada. This is why I tell you this election is so important, because if the United States goes, so goes the world. Freedom of speech doesn't exist anywhere outside of this country. Think of that montage. Robinson was charged with terrorism.
Jeez.
Yeah, for airing that documentary, Silenced. And it shows how,
what?
Ironically, UK courts silence political dissent. So,
bullshit.
Let's go. Let's go through some examples, because I did this one time. America is the greatest country ever. Changed my mind, and people would say, "I don't think so. We're not any better than the rest of Europe." I said, "Well, there is. If you don't even agree with me as it relates to all the other freedoms, the Second Amendment, we are the only country with the First Amendment codified and freedom of speech being absolute, and that to me is enough." And people say, "No, they have it in whichever country they name. It's actually not true. It's not a thing." Let me give you some examples, of course, like conservative supporters have been banned, outright banned on social media in places like Brazil, Scotland, Belgium. Politicians, magazines, comedians have been fined completely or shut down in places like Germany, Netherlands. In Canada, a good friend of our show, Mike Ward, was actually fined, put before a human rights tribunal for a joke. You have citizens who've been arrested for organizing any type of anti-lockdown protests in Australia, in New Zealand. You had the truckers in Canada. And let's get to England and the UK very specifically. Let's get a little granular, because you won't believe me when I say these things if you're American, unless you go and check the references. Some of the arrests or crimes that would be a violation of their speech codes in England include a woman who was arrested for praying silently outside of an abortion clinic. We showed you that video. There was a conservative activist who was jailed for stickers that, quote, incited racial hatred. There was an autistic child arrested for telling a police officer that they looked like their lesbian nana.
She did, though. It was endearing.
I want to have a drink with that autistic child when they're of age.
Yes, of course.
Lawrence Fox was arrested for declaring support for Blade Runners. These were sort of like vigilante groups that were disabling emissions cameras. And I've talked about this before, and many people say there's no way that's true. It is absolutely true. Mm-hmm. A man in the UK was arrested for singing Kung Fu Fighting at a karaoke bar as an Asian man happened to walk by and said it was offensive. These things actually happen in the UK. The only place that the freedom of speech you know and love exists is the United States. And it is something that we take for granted. And it's why it's such a problem when you have these big tech, these social media companies who operate in the United States, but apply the laws of other countries as it relates to speech codes on their platforms. That's not what we do in America. In America, we can upload a video doing a cover of Kung Fu fighting. That's permissible. Facebook, YouTube, Google, people can express support for the Conservative Party, the Republican Party in the United States. Google, YouTube, Facebook, they can. That's the issue. All of these other countries, when people say link arms, we are the world, think of who you're linking arms with.
Yeah.
And think of their laws. You want that here in the United States? So here to discuss this and more, and specifically his case, because I don't think there's anyone more familiar with it than him.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Let's bring on, do we have him? Mr. Tommy Robinson. Hey, Tommy Robinson, you can go to TR Robinson News Era on X or helptommy.com for people who are watching. I need a drink. Watching. It's been a long 48 hours, Tommy. People who are watching, please go and do the good work and help Tommy. Sometimes my brain moves faster than my mouth, but enough about Kamala. Tommy, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good.
So-
Other than the fact I'm faced two years in jail for a film, I'm good.
Is that what you're facing? Is it 2 years? Can you share with people, especially, we've talked about this, I know you've been on the show a bunch of times, it's been a while. Americans need a refresher. They may not be familiar with the charges and why that's the case, because it sounds so foreign to Americans.
Okay, so about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a news story that made global news. I mean, it went around the world, CNN, ABC America, ABC Australia. It went Chinese news, Israeli news. And the story was that a Syrian refugee who had come to England to escape war had been racially bullied, racially attacked, and he'd been waterboarded in school because he was a Syrian refugee. Now, that's the story they went with. They blew it up. Very quickly, parents and little girls at school started saying online that they'd been violently attacked by him and he'd been beating up their daughters. So I spoke to parents at the school and I spoke to children at the school. In 48 hours, £180,000 had been donated to this Syrian refugee, and the media had pumped this story around the world. So I made a video saying, you're not being given the full truth here of what's gone on. The video showed an English boy holding him down and pouring a bottle of water over his head. That was it. They called it waterboarding, yeah? So I made a video saying you're being lied to. Straight away then, I was sued by celebrity jihadist lawyers. Basically, if you're pillaged, you're raped, or you're murdered in the name of Islam, this is the law firm that represent you in the UK. They're the ones trying to bring Shamina Begum back to the UK. They're the ones that represented Michael Adebayo, who beheaded Lee Rigby. So they come for me through the courts. And I was confused at the time as to why no teachers were telling the truth. So what I've done, this is all documented on a documentary, and to the American audience, this documentary, it's about me, but it's far bigger than Tommy Robinson. All of us know that our courts have been weaponised against the public. Whether it be Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, £1 billion, Donald Trump, what happened to Gert Wilders, what happened to Morten Messerschmidt, anyone who challenged the EU, challenged government, challenged open borders, anyone who goes against the narrative, the target is put on them, and they use and manipulate the courts, similar to what you've watched with Donald Trump. I have got the start to finish documented, how they do it, covert recordings, who's involved.
Well,
yeah?
Yes.
All of it.
I want to show this because I know you can't show it in the UK. As I understand it, what they claimed was this specific clip that you include in your documentary was defamation, right, in that civil case, which I know you challenged. So I want to show the clip in question and present they're saying that this guy was actually being bullied. You showed it out of context, and so that's defamation. And I know that you have a counter to that. But let me show the clip for Americans who aren't familiar with the one that you've shown and has led to an arrest.
Say no way. Say no way.
Listen to what Bailey's saying. He's asking Jamal repeatedly, what are you saying now? It wasn't a random attack. It wasn't a racist attack. Bailey didn't threaten to stab Jamal. The playground incident was not the beginning of the story. It was a culmination of many events. Not least, it was a response to Jamal's alleged threats to rape Bailey's younger sisters.
Okay, so my understanding is that the UK court said, that's not true, therefore it's defamation, don't show it, and you showed it. Do you have some, I know people can go to your website, receipts that show that this young man was up to no good?
So basically, I went and wore a hidden camera. and I started approaching the school teachers at their houses. And the first school teacher that come out was an Asian gentleman who said, Tommy, I took the money. And I said, what do you mean you took the money? He said, they paid us. I said, who paid you? He said, Kirklees Council. I said, what did they pay you for? He said, to prevent us ever talking about the Syrian refugee. I said, so that's hush money. He said, that's exactly what it was. And he tells me he received £18,000. I then go to the head teacher's house, who says, Tommy, you're never going to get the truth out there. But I've got it all on camera. You're never going to get the truth out there. He says, this comes from the top. The United Nations meeting spoke about this. They closed the entire school down after this. They went up after the incident, because the Syrian refugee was invited to Parliament. He sat down with our Home Secretary. They sat him on all the TV shows as an innocent victim. Yeah, the truth after this point could never be told. What they've done, they spent £275,000 on non-disclosure agreements to buy the silence of their employees. Yeah, the head teacher, they come into the office, and he says this. They blackmailed him with his pension. They then made him sign a non-disclosure agreement. They escorted him off the school property. He's never worked a day again since. Yeah, never worked a day again since. And part of his non-disclosure agreement, he wasn't even allowed to talk to other teachers. Now, my defamation, I said that he threatened to stab someone. When we get the school records, he does stab someone at school. He stabs 5 pupils in one day, according to the witnesses. He also gets caught with a knife and screwdriver at school. All of this was kept from the public. Teacher after teacher after teacher. I got 7 teachers on camera, and I brought 5 pupils to court. Now, these pupils who'd come to court didn't know me. Before my involvement in the case, one girl, a grade A student, she got 12 A stars, the highest grade you can get. She has not one single disciplinary on her school records. And when she come to court, she was studying law at university. She come to court and testified that the Syrian boy beat her up with a hockey stick at school. Yeah. Another boy come to court and testified that he witnessed that attack. Another boy come to court and testified that the Syrian boy called his mother a white slag and attacked him. That boy was 4 years younger than him. Yeah. So all of these people come to court. What the judge done to get around this, and all this is documented in the case, they said what the judge done is every covert recording I got that proved my case. Now, their case was built. One mother went online and she contacted me and she said that Jamal had beat her daughter up and hit her head. She sent me images of her daughter's bite marks, yeah? She then went out 2 days later and made a statement saying she retracted what she said. I knocked on her door with a hidden camera and said, what's going on, Rebecca? And she said, Tommy, they've threatened to rape us all. I said, who's threatened to rape you all? She said, all the Muslims in the area. I've had to retract it. I said, okay, but was what you said true? She said, yes, it was, but we're too scared. So I produced all this to the judge, saying your case is based on the fact that she pulled out of what she said. Bearing in mind I'm a journalist, and I simply reported what I was told, the judge said that I didn't have public interest as a defence. I had to prove what I said was true. I got 7 covert recordings. Even Jamal's own caseworker for the council, in his emails, says Jamal is not the innocent party. He betrays himself. Now, this story isn't about Jamal. Jamal was a 15-year-old child. He was used. This is about the government controlling the narrative, using the media, using the courts, and destroying anyone who gets in their way. Because the truth of the reality, the government brought 20,000 Syrian refugees into our country at the height of the ISIS conflict that the British public didn't want. This story of one of them beating up girl after girl after girl, terrorising his school, they totally 360'd it. They destroyed the English boy's life in the film. I just asked people to watch the documentary. So the judge gave me an injunction.
Oh, by the way, hey, Tommy, where can people go and watch the documentary here stateside?
Well, the only place is on my Twitter handle. It's pinned at the top. It's had 19 million views in 4 days.
Great.
How is that not in the public interest? This documentary totally exposes the corruption of the judiciary, the lies that they've told, and the weaponisation of it. And I now face 2 years in prison because I made a film, and there's no judge that can tell me nothing in that film is factually incorrect. They are unhappy because they want to deceive the public about these stories. Because if the truth was told about this story, it's their failures. It's the government failures, and that's going to expose their failures. So they closed down the entire school. They paid everyone to remain silent, and then the media told the whole country I lied.
Can I ask you something?
The documentary proves I did.
Because one thing that stuck out to me, well, first off, you may have to explain what slag means to Americans, but also, you said he did stab somebody at school. Do you have a record of that? Is that provided in the documentary? Not just someone saying it, but a record.
It's in the documentary. The teacher's words were, he stabbed another pupil. I then went to that pupil's house.
A teacher said that. So just to be clear, for people listening, because I can hear the critics going, well, kids talk. A teacher said he stabbed another student at school.
In the school records, the teacher's words, he stabbed another pupil. Now, I went to the pupil's house. I wore a hidden camera. So I got the school record, and I got the pupil, and I got his mother telling the story. Now, the pupil says he stabbed 5 people that day. He drew blood on the boy he stabbed. A boy, I won't mention the boy's name. But all of this is it. How can I be found to have defamed someone when, for saying he threatened to stab someone, when the school records show he does go around stabbing people? He gets caught with a knife and screwdriver. The verdict, for the judge to come up with this verdict, it's impossible, which is why he put an injunction preventing you, the public, from ever seeing the evidence. That's what he's done. If he's so confident about his case, why is he hiding it?
What was their defense? So in other words, if they acknowledge, okay, he stabbed somebody, are they saying, well, he was bullied, that's why he stabbed?
No, there was no defence. So Jamal was the only person who come to court to give evidence for himself. I bought 7 teachers' covert recordings, all of them saying, backing up what I said. I bought 5 pupils, as well as all the school records. Now, Jamal had 117 disciplinaries for truancy, violence, and lying and lying and lying and lying. Yeah. When I got the teachers on camera, they said the boy just lies about everything. Yeah. But yet the judge found that the 7 teachers, the judge is ruling. The 7 teachers were lying. The 5 pupils that come and give testimony were lying. The only person telling the truth was the Syrian refugee. And in his intellectual mind, this is the most senior judge in our country, his words, sometimes people don't need a reason to lie, they just lie.
Yes.
So he found that all of these people just randomly lie.
He's in court and he would lie about stabbing people. The one thing I don't understand is if he had a knife, why this screwdriver? That's just adding insult to injury at that point. You don't really need it. I knew one kid in Canada who stabbed somebody and got expelled. He did it at a local Burger King with a potato peeler, which is way scarier than a knife.
Yeah. He didn't even get expelled. This Syrian refugee didn't even get expelled. Whereas if it was an English pupil, he would get expelled. Now, this is the problem we have.
Yeah.
And then now, and you know, that film was leaked 2 years ago, Stephen, in America.
Yeah.
They didn't come for me for 2 years. I organised a massive rally with 30,000 people. Bang. Straight away after that, 2 years after the film was leaked in America, they come for me for contempt of court. Now, 2 weeks ago, before our last demonstration on the 27th, they started deleting this video that had been online anywhere. So what they were going to do is tell the whole world, and through the media, that I breached the court injunction and I lied. Now they have a problem. The problem is 19 million people have seen the evidence and seen that documentary. So now, as I said, they think they put me on trial. I've just put you on trial, yeah? The world, 19 million people. That is twice as many people who voted the Labour government in the UK 3 weeks ago. Twice as many people who voted have watched that documentary. By the time they get me in the court, 40 to 50 million people would have watched that film. Now, if they want to send me to jail, which they do, if they want to lock me up, then the world's going to know I've been locked up as a journalist in 2024 for showing the public the truth. This wasn't about silencing me, it's about deceiving you. That's what this is about. Lying and deceiving the public to push their open border migration narrative and to paint English people as racist and paint Syrian refugees as victims, when the actual reality of the story is the total opposite.
Yeah. And it really is scary. Are you still in the country or have you left? Are you going to go back?
So I played the film, yeah? I made a decision. You're not going to control the narrative, yeah? You want to send me to jail, you send me to jail and let everyone know what you sent me to jail for, all right? So I made a decision to play the film in front of 100,000 people in Trafalgar Square in the biggest gathering of patriots this country has ever seen. There's a revolution brewing in Great Britain, okay? We've had enough. The public are at breaking point. We've had an invasion into our country. Our culture's disappearing. You've taken the safety of our daughters. It's gone. We no longer feel safe in our towns and cities. Any father and mother are now terrified for the future of their children. And whilst this is going on, they import more Pakistanis, more Eritreans, more Somalis, more Afghanis. They keep bringing them in, undocumented migrants with no criminal record checks who are put into our towns and cities, and they're literally raping their way through our nation. And anyone who talks out against it is a racist extremist.
Yeah.
So the public The 100,000 people took to the streets. I showed the film. The next morning, I went to board a ferry, a train in my vehicle, and I was arrested under counter-terrorism legislation at the port in Folkestone. And under the counter-terrorism legislation, when I was arrested, you do not have a right to remain silent, okay? This article that they nicked me under says it can be used if they believe someone is in the preparation of acts of terrorism. Now, their words to me were, we know you're not, but under this legislation, we can take you now, and you have to... So they set me down for 6 hours, and they grilled me about my legal, political, journalistic work.
Yeah.
They grilled me about who's working with me, what's your next plans. Do you know one of their questions? How do you think you can stop the Great Replacement? That was their question.
Right.
I said, what is going on? What is going on?
How many times do you think Donald Trump said the N-word? Did you see the Fred Trump interview? You're like, I don't got some. Yeah, and you know what? I want to ask you too. So one thing, here's something else that I hope the public is watching out for, because this is what they'll do. They'll go, oh, he's trying to make it seem like us versus him, this corrupt government versus him. But really, they'll try it out like they've done with Donald Trump, either former employees or people who don't like you, who are disgruntled, and go, he can't get along with his own folks. Look at this. And then, of course, they'll try and paint you as a racist. Let me frame this in for people who are watching right now, because sometimes they'll get what the media says, and a defense that's provided by the innocent party is too long. Let's paint a scenario, and I want a real answer, because I know what it is. I'm obviously leading the jury here, leading the witness, I should say. If there happened to be, let's say a Christian Syrian refugee. Now, it was less than 1% of the population, but they were being executed in Syria, right? They were people who would actually be refugees. If a Christian refugee came to you at one of those rallies and said, hey, I am from Syria. I fled persecution because my family is going to be executed because we're Christians. And I agree with you, and it's a real problem that scares me, bringing in the same kinds of people from whom I fled in this country. I'd like to be a part of what you're doing and assist. What would you say?
I'd say that the point that's terrified them is they've tried to demonise us as racist and extremists. The diversity of our crowd in that 100,000. The Iranians were supporting us. The Black Nigerians were supporting us. Every minority group turned out in support of us. It's the same with Donald Trump. The more they've tried to alienate him and demonise him, now it's pulling the people towards them. So everyone in our country, so I'd embrace that person as I'd embrace anyone who comes into Great Britain and wants to integrate and assimilate. I have a problem with the people who want to dominate and subjugate us and want to take over and declare war on us. Now, obviously, under these terrorism legislation, under their legislation, you have to give them the PIN code to your phone. So they've took my phone and said, give us your PIN code, yeah? Well, I've said, I'm a journalist. You can't have access to my sources of information. I'm a full-time journalist. In that phone, I have privileged information from lawyers and privileged information from journalists, from sources of information who talk to me because they don't trust you. Now, just so your audience understand, we've had a rape epidemic by Pakistani Muslim gangs from one end of our country to the other. In the Rotherham report, the police deleted and got rid of evidence. In the Rochdale report, corrupt police officers were working with the gangs. In the Telford case, we exposed a corrupt high-ranking police officer was taking money off the gangs. So I have sources of information that give me information. I've done a 5-part series on these gangs. We've exposed the gangs, politicians, police officers. I'm not going to put the safety of those sources of information at jeopardy for the corrupt police to put it on their system so anyone can find it. So I obviously told them, no, you're not going to have the PIN code to my phone. It's not happening. I'm a journalist. You can't do that. At which point they said, well, you now are breaching terrorism legislation, so you're going to be charged with terrorism. Yeah? So then they transferred me. And all this is about is a fishing expedition for them. And again, where I have to answer their questions. They want to know what I'm planning, what I'm doing, what our next step is. And all of this is our democratic rights. We held a peaceful rally, Stephen, with 100,000 people. I think there was 9 arrests in total. But it was a celebration, a festival of Britishness. Yeah. There was nothing bad there. It was music, Christian gospel singing. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful day that gave us back our identity that they've taken from us, and they've worked so hard to separate us.
Tommy, and I know you've been on the show here before. We just don't do guests that often these days, especially in the election cycle. We have questions from Mug Club chat for you, if we can tee them up. Noodles, what do we got for Mr. Robinson? Oh, wait, sorry, hold on a second. Sorry, shut up. Gerald had a question for you. I'm rude. He called me, and Josh has a question too. You can't see them, but you can hear them. All right, Gerald, you shut up. What do you say? No, you wait. You stop. Gerald, you go first.
Okay, all right. So tell me, I had a couple of questions for you. Can you tell me what year did the incident with the Syrian kid happen? With the actual original?
This is where it goes. This is where you get the conspiracy. So it happens in, I think it's 2018, but the video doesn't organically go viral. So it happens here on the 20th, say, yeah? Then the solicitors put in a criminal record check. It takes a month to come back. So then the day the criminal record check comes back, they set up a GoFundMe. The next day, it's viral around the world. They literally planned it. They had the camera footage. They sat there for 4 weeks. They planned the tour it was for money making and pushing the narrative. They were on every news channel. So that was 2018. I produced my documentary. They started suing me.
Well, hold on. I think you had a follow-up, right, Gerald?
Well, so the reason I was getting the timeline there is because a lot of people don't know, like, we're still in it, but that's kind of the height of people pushing back and saying, wait a minute, all this uncontrolled illegal immigration into the UK is ending up with Sharia courts and no-go zones.
Right, the context, yeah.
Yeah, everybody. I think the context is very important. This wasn't something that just happened in the last year or two, right?
No, and they gave me an injunction 3 years ago. So I went to court. I didn't even read it, yeah, but they banned me from playing the film. And do you know what? I failed myself as a journalist and I failed myself as a man because I allowed them to gag me. I failed, yeah?
The courts, not a Syrian refugee, to be clear.
No,
I just want to be very clear. He's saying the courts gagged him.
The courts gagged me. Yeah? So then I made the decision last weekend that you're not gagging me anymore. Yeah? You're not gagging me anymore. You want to send me to jail anyway. Let the world see the film and let the public make their decision, yeah? And 19 million have watched it, and if you just read the comments, everyone now knows I told the truth. The problem is, I'm under that. I've got another injunction preventing me from also saying other stuff. It's happening in America. Laura Loomer's under an injunction from the courts.
Dude.
This guy.
Are you?
Oh, yeah, we can't. I can't talk about it. So screw you for bringing it up. But they're not going to gag me anymore. It's the opposite of Kamala's campaign.
Right. So what's the Tommy? What's the strategy? Obviously, part of it seems to be making sure that people see the truth. But you obviously have to deal with either A, never going back to the United Kingdom, or B, going back and facing down these charges. So what is the strategy?
The strategy is I'm out of the United Kingdom at the minute. I'm going to do as many interviews and podcasts as I can. I've got my children joining me next week. Or tomorrow, and I had that planned anyway. And the strategy is to make sure the world sees that film. So I've never been in a better position to expose the corruption and weaponisation of the judiciary. Yeah, this film does it. The fact that 19 million people have watched it in 4 days, Stephen, if you can, it's my pinned tweet. Yeah, if you get time, just share it as well. Yes. I want the world to watch it. So by the time they get into a position,
and by me, I mean my people who do it, because I don't do social media anymore. I have them take stuff from the show and just quote me because I hate what's like. I do I always tell people if they want to know what I have to say, watch the show. So yes, if they're watching right now, then I'm saying yes, we're going to repost that.
But if your people can,
absolutely, we'll repost it and we'll do a cross post with this interview on Instagram. You're not on Instagram, are you? Are you still?
No, I'm not. No, it's one of the ones I'm banned from. But prison for me, so I face prison. Prison for me is potential death because every jail is controlled by jihadist gangs, or it's going to be 2 years of solitary confinement for playing a film.
I thought you were going to say prison for me is home sweet home because you spent some time there.
Yeah, no, it's terrible for me. It's literally like, it is. The likeliness is if they get to me, I'll get killed in jail. Yeah, and that may be what the system wants. So yeah,
that's why I would say, look, man, there's the court of public opinion, and unfortunately, there are corrupt courts, right? We see that happen in the States all the time, and sometimes they try and convict people in the court of public opinion. Where in the United States, there still is a somewhat, I guess I should say, something that resembles a judicial system, but it's been corrupted, it's been weaponized. I think you've proven your point, and I think you can continue to prove your point in the court of public opinion, which is, I mean, think of those 100,000 people who showed up physically. Now think of the millions of people. You can continue to prove that point if you're not in jail. So I would say I wouldn't rush to be a martyr because we need more people out there actually speaking, not more people jailed. But I also understand that you're a man of great conviction, so I will, I'll have your back on that either way. I mean, assuming, of course, you didn't doctor it. And it's like, he swapped the white guy and the refugee, but it doesn't look that way, of course. Did you have one more follow-up, Gerald, or no? Okay, good. Josh had a question for you.
I have one question. So we have a few things in the United States some people take for granted that you might not have in UK, like freedom of speech, real football, cheeseburgers with donuts for buns. But one of the things is our Second Amendment, our right to, bear arms. Do you think that a lot of people in the UK would feel less scared of threats, like the family being threatened to be raped, the whole family being threatened to be? Do you think they'd feel more safe if you had a right to bear arms? If people had guns in the house?
I don't believe that the hundreds of thousands of girls that were raped by these gangs would have been raped if we had a right to bear arms. The crazy thing is, I've had nearly 10 or 12 official Osman warnings. It's where the government come and sit you down. So I've sat down with my wife. Police officers have come in from counter-terrorism, said, right, we have intelligence that people want to kill you. Al-Shabaab was one of them, yeah? You've been named by Al-Shabaab. And then they give you a bit of paper. And the bit of paper says, you cannot get a weapon. You cannot protect yourself, yeah? If you get a weapon, you'll be prosecuted for trying to defend yourself. So basically, people are going to kill you. We know they are. You know they are. There you go. See you later.
Yeah.
All the criminals still have weapons. All the criminals still have guns. In fact, there's a stabbing epidemic across our entire nation. So even if we're going about guns, they're just knifing each other every single day of the week. Yeah.
We have a saying here. Don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'd rather be shot than stabbed.
Huh?
I'd rather be shot than stabbed if I had a pick.
Do you know, lads,
that was quicker.
We had a soldier last week in full military uniform. A migrant who's been in the country 6 months jumped off of a moped, waited for him, stabbed him 70 times outside the barracks. It didn't even really make our news. Yeah, it wasn't called terrorism. It was called mental health. We've just had an incident in a school 2 days ago where a migrant son has gone into a school and targeted 7-year-old girls. 3 of them are dead. He stabbed to bits all these children. Again, mental health. Now, I can give you example after example of cases I've researched. There was a Muslim lad who went into his mosque in 2016, and he said, I want to kill non-Muslims. Do you know what they did? They didn't ring the police. They said a prayer for him. After his prayer, he went to Russell Square, he screamed Allah Akbar, he killed an American citizen. He stabbed 7 people and he killed an American citizen. Do you know what the media told us? Mental health. It's always mental health. Migrants murdering is mental health. It's not jihad, it's not an attack. We're continually gaslit, we're continually lied to, we're continually deceived. And that's why they hate people like me having a platform, because we investigate their lies. Right. And then we say, actually, to the public, they're lying to you.
Yeah. One thing on a lighter note, I do love that British people still say mental. Like, that's absolutely mental.
Mental. Yeah.
It's great. They can say it. I guess is that still allowed, or is it like retarded here in the States? Are you allowed to say mental?
No, you can still say mental.
We can still say mental.
It's one of the few words we can say. You can't say anything else.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's good, because I guess mental isn't necessarily related to a disability, so you can say. So let's start saying mental.
I like their looseness with the word cunt.
Yes,
It's a very bad word here in the U.S.
Well, yes, and we have a girl who works remotely. She contracts for us. Hi, Sarah, and she's there in the UK, and she would be sometimes on Skype calls when we would do research calls. And she would drop the C word all the time. But, there it's like, you bastard, kind of a term of endearment.
Was she Scottish? Was she Scottish?
No, she wasn't. But she would go, oh, you cheeky cunt. And I had a girl who worked here. Thank God we didn't have HR who complained. It was like, I was like, no, you don't understand. It's like calling bastard or like son of a bitch. And when someone here said the word bitch, Sarah was like, well, you're a bit loose with the language. I was like, it's just they're just words. They're just syllables that go together. But yeah, Tommy, that is, let me ask you this. I have some chats here that I want to go to. And I appreciate your direct answer to that question. Yep. I think the Second Amendment is quite important. This is from Cobalt Smith, Tommy. It's, in your opinion, what is the most effective way for Americans to avoid the hell you're dealing with over there?
Well, start by getting rid of Joe Biden.
He got rid of himself.
To Americans, I used to hear Americans moan about immigration coming from Mexico. And I used to sit and think, you ain't got any clue, really, if I'm honest, yeah? The 8 million that have come through your borders in the last 4 years, there'll be Afghani, now you're getting Middle Eastern, Pakistani, Iraqi, Syrian. You have no idea of the cultural problems, the hostility that is on its way to America. Yeah, the Mexicans, like, you have no idea of the problems that are now coming. And I can speak from an example. I'm from a town called Luton where we are a melting pot of migrants, of immigrants. My mum was an immigrant, most of my mates, St. Lucian, Jamaican, Bulgarian, Italian. But the one section who are a total different breed of hostility, violence, rape is the Islamic community. You've now had your borders open for 4 years to Islam.
Yeah.
It's being flooded. You will see the dominance. You will see the power that they have, even in small numbers. And you will see your politicians bend the knee to them at every opportunity.
Yeah, and I can definitely speak to that. You know, having been raised in Canada, we've seen that there. There were honor killings. A big thing is if you looked in Canada at the missing children, you know, they always used to have it. I know here you talk about milk cartons.
Yeah.
On the side of, at least for a while, I don't know if they still, on the side of soda fountain machines. They'd always have all the pictures of missing children. And at that point in time, the vast majority were obviously Islamic. And a big reason for that is because the man in their culture can simply just say divorce 3 times, leave, and he has all the parental rights. And so these weren't child abductions how we imagined them. In Canada, it was just a dad, boom, leaving. And they had problems with that. There was a lady who used to come on this show back when it was on radio from, I believe it was Sterling Heights, Michigan, where she actually had that happen to her. So I've lived it in Canada, and it's really pretty severe. Also, you know, we've done some investigative journalism here. We did the piece on the illegal grow farms, the marijuana grow farms, and how many of them are owned by Chinese companies. And we followed that money, and a lot of Chinese nationals have come through the border too. So that's something. Just the open border, period. If it's porous, anyone who wants to do you harm can use it. It's that simple. I mean, it's just like if you live in a bad neighborhood, or you know there are people out there who want to come into your house and hurt your family or steal your stuff, you lock the door. It's really pretty rudimentary. People will say that's reductive, and I'm okay with it. Let me go to another question from Bain from Golden Corral. And by the way, it's helptommy.com. Please, everyone go out there, and we will be circulating it on social media. Bain from Golden Corral asks, has the Muslim community pushed back against you as well? If so, how severe has it been compared to the government, meaning the Muslim community versus the government?
So when I first started my activism, I knew, because I've grown up in Luton. Luton is 50% Pakistani Muslim. We have over 40 mosques in my town, yeah? So I knew when you talk out about these issues, they're going to come for you. And I was ready for that. I knew I'd get violent attacks. But I wasn't ready for the state. I wasn't ready for the interference of government. I was shocked by the level. I no longer worry, and I say I no longer worry. There's 6 Muslims doing 30 years who got caught with guns and bombs and IEDs and suicide vests on the way to kill us. But they got there 2 hours late. Yeah, they got there 2 hours late. There's a video of them walking through where we were 2 hours late. It's like the most thick, stupid morons. They go there 2 hours late. They have no insurance on their car.
I can speak to that.
They get pulled over with no insurance. They've got no insurance on their car.
Yeah.
That's how they got caught. But so I've always expected. I faced lots of violence at the hands of Muslims. But it's the government that terrifies me. It's them knowing that they wish to totally. They're not just happy with censoring us. I was censored totally for 5 years. They still weren't happy. They need to break you, destroy you financially. This case with the Syrian refugee, they bankrupt me for 1.6 million. They totally finished me. They bankrupt me. It caused my divorce. They targeted my family at every level, and that's the government. That's not the Muslims. Per se, I hold my hands up. When I've seen Muslims when I'm with my family, even ones that disagree with me have been very respectful. Very respectful, yeah? It's the gut that, so my fear is not Muslims. I don't mind if someone wants to have a scrap with me walking down the street. My fear is the government, what they're planning next, what they plan to do to me in the prison system, how long they plan to lock me up for, their continued lies and the way they've slandered and destroyed my name. And for years, until Elon Musk gave me back my voice, they took away my chance of even countering their lies. Yeah. Now I can counter them to the whole world, so I'm happy.
That's well.
Thank you, Elon.
Yeah, Elon, and I don't know if your film is there on Rumble as well, but now there's at least 2 platforms that are alternatives out there that have a significant portion.
Tommy Robinson Official.
Tommy Robinson Official. All right,
that's my Rumble.
I don't know if on Rumble we have if there's like a cross tab type thing. We need to check and see, or if not, they're adding it soon and make sure that people can see it. Final question here, Tommy, because I know you're on a different time zone here. It's from Froggy Thickleg. Asks, is the right to self-preservation recognized at all, meaning over there in the UK? And if it is, does it hinge on societal status as, for example, white versus alien in favor of the alien?
Oh, everything's in favour of the minorities. So everything, which is what we keep saying. They get priority housing, priority everything, yeah? Everything is aimed against us. And we're supposed to celebrate becoming minorities in our own country. That's diversity is our strength. Whilst all our daughters are being raped, people are being pillaged, jihadi attacks going on everywhere, we're supposed to be just, thank you guys, thank you for the open borders, we're loving this.
Yeah.
So everything stands against the native population of the country. They do not care about us. They are in the process of replacing us with loyal vote banks from the Islamic community and migrant community, and they don't care. And in fact, and that's what I said even now. I expect, Stephen, you'll be reading the news. When I go back to face this case, I'm going to go back and face this case. I fully expect to be in prison for a long time. And they don't care that the public know I told the truth. They don't. And when you think of freedom of speech, it's a facade. There is no freedom of speech in Great Britain. You know, democracy, we talk about democracy. The Reform Party, the anti-immigration party, they got 4.5 million votes. They got 5 MPs. The Liberal Democrats got 3.5 million votes. They got 70 MPs. Yeah. People got excited because the Reform Party got 5 MPs. Jihadists got 5 MPs in our last elections. Pro-jihadists, pro-Hamas, Muslim representatives got 5 MPs. That's the future of politics in this country, and it's the future of politics in America. You need to brace up and get ready for what's coming.
Yeah, well, people here, just to put in context, think of, I don't know, a third of our House being Ilhan Omar's and Rashida Tlaib's, at least. That's what they would be looking at. Yeah, that's exactly what you'd be looking at.
That's what's coming.
I did want to ask you one thing, too. I'm curious about this, and there may not be an answer. Do you have, because in the United States, obviously right now we've had a lot of problems with illegal immigration, largely from Hispanic countries. But we've talked about this. There is an exception to the rule. And by the way, it's people who actually have a legitimate claim to asylum. Cuban immigrants. They actually would fit the definition of asylum in the United States, fleeing a persecuting communist government, right? They actually, we are the nearest country. They could come here to escape communism, and they are the most consistent and overwhelming conservative voting bloc. Unbelievably patriotic here in this country.
From where? From where?
From Cuba. From Cuba.
Oh,
because
from
they
Cuba,
flee
okay.
communism. It's just, you could throw a baseball almost and hit Cuba, right? So they actually, it's not coming from Syria. It's like Cuba, if they get on a raft, they're fleeing a government that will jail them for speaking out. They come to the United States, the work ethic, the way they vote, the family structure, it's very, very different. My agent, Gay William, we talk about him. He is gay, he is Latino, but he's Cuban, so he is to the right of Attila the Hun. And I know quite a few Cuban Americans who are the most vocal people who push back against illegal immigration. Do you have a group like that of immigrants in the UK who you think are the most likely allies who see the problem?
The Sikh community.
The Sikh community. That's what I thought.
Loyal, hard-working. You couldn't ask for better migrants. The Sikh and Hindu community, really. They all work hard. They're still very religious, but inside their home, they integrate, they assimilate. They're the best. They're the best business owners, property owners. They work very hard. Their family haven't been broke down the way ours have. There's a total attack on the family across the West to destroy the family, weaken the family, feminise the man. That hasn't happened as strong in the Sikh community, so their community is still strong and close-knit. I always say, if the reason why Angela Merkel let 1 million Syrians into the country was because of the ageing population, they needed workers. Why did you bring in Muslims? Because they don't per se work. Yeah, they don't. They're happy to be reliant. They're happy to be reliant on the state. 50% of Muslim women are on benefits. They're quite happy to do that. Why didn't you bring in hard-working migrants from other countries if that's your excuse? So yes, we do have. I was in Cuba, Stephen. I was there. I was there like 2 years ago, and I was on my way to America. And so I went to the Bahamas. And it cost me $10,000. I was doing a documentary. It took me 48 hours. I was sitting in Tenerife. This film had been released. And I thought, where's the one place in the world that has freedom of speech? America. Where could I be saved from this? America. So I thought, let's see how long it takes me to get in. So I looked. 48 hours later, $10,000 to get into the United States from the Bahamas. So I went to Cuba first on the way. Do you know who those boats are full of coming into America? White Irish people.
Really?
I swear to God.
Really?
White Irish travellers coming into the country illegally, probably because of criminal record checks or whatnot.
Yeah.
But they're coming in. I was so surprised.
You know them Irish.
Keep them. So they go through Cuba?
I went to Cuba. I went to Cuba on the way to the Bahamas, and then I had a meeting with a lawyer, and the lawyer told me that I can't claim asylum. Yeah, I can only claim because of my criminal record in the UK.
Okay.
So then I sat in the Bahamas thinking, what do I do now?
Yeah, well, it's funny because you've been to Cuba. Remember when Barack Obama was there in front of the Che flag and you've had Americans praise Cuba. You saw the abject poverty because a lot of Canadians would go, I'm one of the few people who legally has been to Cuba as a Canadian citizen. I was there to shoot a commercial and then I went to entertain the troops in Guantanamo Bay. And Guantanamo Bay is really probably the only place in Cuba where people actually live in the modern world. And
yeah, because they've got nothing.
No.
They've got nothing. They're all living in derelict houses.
Yeah.
But they all seem so happy. in the sense of dancing, music and dancing. I went into into the ghettos and places where they say don't go. I read all the tourist information and thought, I'm going to go see for myself. I went everywhere, man. I met some great people. I still keep in contact with some of them.
Yeah.
Some of the lads, some of them.
And Cuban Americans, too. They're a little bit racist. But here's what's funny about it. They're a little bit racist, but when they say what they say about black people, they mean black Americans, because there are a lot of black Cubans. And if you see Cubans who come to the United States, they'll talk about black American culture, because a lot of them come to Miami, right? They're in cities in Florida where obviously they would be in close proximity. And they're shocked. But then they go and they talk with the black Cuban because they share they share a common language. They share the same. They don't see them. When they say, hey, blacks here, and they say things that would seem racist to us, they're talking specifically only about black Americans. They don't even consider it with black Cubans. They just consider them a Cuban brother. So it's just something here when we look at the divide and conquer politics from the left. It's a very interesting kind of case study, Cuban Americans, and the only case study that really would exist that has a legitimate claim to asylum. But we do have to stop those drunken mix coming through Cuba. I don't like that at all. We do have to get going. It is helptommy.com. Please keep us updated, sir. And I hope that documentary gets to 100 million and everyone sees it.
So do I. If anyone can, just share it, and keep sharing it, man.
Absolutely.
So at least if I go jail, it's been worth it.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's T. Robinson, New Era. I think I said it wrong earlier. I think I said T.
You said news.
News. Son of a
new era.
Son of a bitch.
T. Robinson, New Era.
Admonish you.
Yeah, you should admonish me. It's you know what? It's a complicated handle, Tommy.
I know.
You should get your Twitter down to one name, along with sometimes some questions can just be a couple phrase answers.
Hey. I was just happy to get my Twitter back.
Yes.
Okay?
There we go.
I was just happy to get it back.
Yes, I understand. And now you can subtract. Tommy, thank you for being here, brother. We appreciate it.
Watch Slider with Crowder live Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.